I know this could be super simple and silly, but some people might not know how to take a screenshot on your screen. A lot of the stuff that we go over and do just to make sure that you've participated and you've attempted, and the same thing for like assignments outside of the class, just to make sure that you have record that you've done it before you know how to export out of AutoCAD. We're just going to use the screenshot method. So does anyone not know how to take a screenshot with your computer? You just use the screenshot button at the top of your keyboard, print screen. Cool. Yeah, there we go. So print screen at the top of your keyboard. You just press that. Then if you go to something like Word is probably the easiest one. And this is silly that there has to be an extra step. It would be really nice if you could do a save as on its own. And then if you just right click and paste or Control V, you'll have a screenshot. And then if you right click on that, you can do save as picture. Okay. So there's a couple of times that we're going to go through exercises or assignments, and your deliverable that we will ask for is just a screenshot of your screen with AutoCAD open of the things that you've completed. And so this is going to be the process that you're going to go through. So you use print screen on the keyboard, then you go to Word. You can use other applications, but Word's the quickest, honestly. And Control V or paste, and then save as a picture. And then you save it in your folders. Which one of your assignments for this week will be just making folders that are nice, clean, and structured for your semester, so that things are not lost in the abyss. Cool? Does that make sense to everybody? I know.
Still working on it.
Okay. Jess, what part of our is the hang up at? Jess? Hold on a second, Jess. What? Where's the screen? Oh, in the pictures? Okay, that's good enough. That's good enough. Okay. Yeah, Jess? What?
Are they saving this all, or is it just a practice room?
No, this is just how to do it. The instructions are also in your guides. So the printed guides that everyone has links on how to do this as a reminder. But this is just a heads up for whenever you do have to provide a screenshot. And what was your name actually? Jake. Cool. Jake just informed me that you can actually do the Windows key and push print screen, and it'll save it to your screenshots in your computer. But you will still need to go name it and move it after that point. But so let me. So it makes a screenshot folder when you do it, and then it saves in there, which is nice and useful. So that's good to know. Are we good to move on? What? Okay, great. Okay, we're gonna start with the actual AutoCAD stuff. Woo! So for the actual AutoCAD stuff, we just wanted to start off with a quick explanation of what is AutoCAD, what's the purpose, or why do we care to have some efficiency in it. And a lot of that comes from when you produce a set of documents and line work. The difference between what you produce when you hand draw versus whenever you produce in AutoCAD is precision. Precision and actual measurement, despite you using a scale bar, doesn't always mean that it's exact. You can't send someone to go build that right from a hand drawing and expect it to come out flawlessly. And your CAD documents are normally the things that lead into construction documents. And those are your legal binding things that get the things that you creatively want to happen in the world. So you get excited about design and you're pumped about those things, but if you cannot express them properly later, then they don't get to be built into something that you want it to be in the first place. So being able to use AutoCAD and then get a little bit quicker or efficient so that you can put more time and effort into design process and drawing and idea generation, that's the key, is to get efficient in this so that it becomes less of a priority. So right now there's a big focus, but ideally you want it to be something that's second nature and you don't have to worry about. So I just have an example of this project, this park. You see all the little things. It's fairly simple. It's nothing too crazy except for maybe this little overlook. But that one park itself has a set of, it's within a bigger set of construction documents, and it has 12 pages just to try and depict what you would have to produce just for this one park. It's simple walks, planting, and then one maybe more elaborate wall. And all of this stuff is produced, and there's 1,000 comments somehow on here. All this stuff is produced via AutoCAD, and it's a construction document set that you would typically make, you know, within oh, it does labels for each of the real text label. That's really annoying. But you can see that, like, the amount of line work and drawing and all of those things that you would have to produce, the only way that you get to have the fun, pretty thing that you express and want to have built into the world is you have to suffer through this and get it busted out through AutoCAD and draft it in there. So that's just our little bit of intro. I'm going to open up, if you haven't already, pull up the basics of drawing exercise 1 AutoCAD. So AutoCAD is one of the most common drafting softwares amongst engineering, architecture, and landscape architecture. There are others, obviously, but this one's really common. And another note that I really want to express is that there is not one way to do absolutely anything in here. There is at least 3 at minimum to complete any task. Any task, you can either type it, you can either find the button for it, or you could probably right click and find options and other things to get to whatever that is. There's a different way to do absolutely everything. I'm going to attempt to show you 1 or 2 methods, or what I'm comfortable with or find efficient. But there are a billion other ways. So if you're outside of this class and exploring things, by all means, try to find what works best for your workflow. So the interface is super customizable. We'll give suggestions. So if you see the bits and pieces that you see at the top, very similar to like Word, for instance, this is customizable, but then you will be pulling in new tool banks of sort, very similar to Adobe products. You'll have a lot of those that you'll be able to push and pull around. And there's all sorts of things that you can do in here, and we'll go over some of those things when we get to that point. So then we're going to start breaking down. You can see there's a picture. I don't think I have the updated one in here. That's brilliant. There should be a photo of on that instruction sheet or the guide sheet. This kind of breaks down the interface of what each thing is. So I'm going to run down the top bar. That's very similar to like Word, for instance. That's your ribbon. You'll find tabs up at the top. Insert, annotate, all sorts. Home is going to have most of your basics, obviously. And each of these things that you can do up here, you can do all of these things without even touching these buttons, technically. So sometimes I avoid these buttons because it's a lot of work to go seeking them out. Back when I learned AutoCAD, these buttons didn't exist. So you had to memorize a bunch of words and commands, which you will be taught, in order to make this program function. So the first is the ribbon, and then the next one is the status bar. So the status bar is the one at the bottom. These are kind of like continuous tools or settings that you have turned on and off. The ones at the top are like telling the program what you'd like to currently do and actively do, like once action, versus the ones at the bottom are continuous actions. And we're gonna start off by, when you look down here, make sure that this one, the fun little right angle, make sure that is turned off. So it is dark blue or gray instead of bright blue. And then we're gonna do the same one for this square down at the bottom with the little square at the top. We are going to turn that one off as well. And then I'm also going to have you, let's see, if you can click these 3 bottom right lines. Yeah.
You don't have a status bar at the bottom. You don't have like insert and end state stuff at the top at all.
Interesting. Let me come look at that real quick.
It just looks like maybe. I think. Yeah, so this one is AutoCAD. Perfect. You might close both of these real quick. Yeah, so if you read at the top in the middle of your screen at the very top, it needs to say AutoCAD, Autodesk AutoCAD 2022 or whatever year. And then, so what could have happened is, go to your downloads for me. What could have happened is that the default program for opening that file was possibly the viewer. So go to the file that we're just so yeah, just make sure that you've got AutoCAD. Autodesk AutoCAD is what reads at the top. So upstairs, this might be different if you have somehow managed to open Civil 3D, but it should not be a problem because those two kind of are friends with each other. Make sure at the top of your screen it says, mine doesn't even say that, so that's really cool. Horrifying. But you can also check by the top left-hand corner, it should be a red A. So hers was, I think, a D or something, a different program. It's a viewer for DWGs, but it is not actively allowed. It doesn't actively allow you to draw. So make sure you check that you've got the right one open. Let me know if you get to a point that you cannot still get it open, okay? Cool, I'm glad we ran through that. So bottom right-hand corner, the 3 lines. If you select that, you get a big giant list. Scroll to the one that says dynamic input for me and select it, and it'll just have a check mark. Did you find the file? I'm gonna mute this real quick, 1 second. Let's see, or okay, we fixed it. I apologize. All right. So once you've selected dynamic input in those 3 lines, then you will now have a new button down here. Woo, don't click things. You'll have a new button down here, this one, that has a plus and a small rectangle. You just want to make sure that's turned off as well. Okay. That's just to prep you to make things a little simpler while we're learning things, and you will learn what each of those buttons do later as we're drawing. Good, yeah. Next one is the command line. This one's very, very, very important.
The command line can be moved, but ideally it is sitting at the bottom of your AutoCAD, straight in the middle. If you grab any of the grips, these little lines on the far left, you can pick up and move it. It's best to put this in a place that you will always find it, and don't let it askew. So put it in a spot and leave it there. The command prompt bar is where you tell it this program to do absolutely everything. It is a command-based program. It remembers everything you do, very code-like, but it hides it from you. So everything that I have done has a little drop down on the far right-hand corner of your command prompt, and it remembers every single action that you do in this program. If you type in this bar, this is how you tell it what to do. We're going to go over which commands do what and how to input them. But generally, anytime you start typing in this program, it will start typing in this bar. So this is a very important bar. It is where all the magic happens. And so we'll get to that whenever we get to the actual command set you're learning. I will note for the command prompt bar, in order to activate anything that you put inside of this bar, you have to push space or enter, one or the other. Some people find the space bar very efficient when you start getting really quick, but space or enter inputs anything in there. Okay. Escape is going to be your friend. It's one of those redundant things that you just keep pushing to get out of everything when you mess up once. So anytime that you are in a place that you think you've messed up and you need to start over, you need to make sure that your commands are all turned off. You just push escape for everything. Anytime you look down in this bar and it does not say type a command, then it means you have a command activated. You are telling it, the program, to do something right now, and it's like a one-track mind. Whatever's in there is what's happening until you leave it. So you can either push escape and you can leave it and start from scratch again. Additionally, every command has instructions that pop up in there as well, and we're going to go over some of those things. Then there are, I think I'm on a different instruction sheet than you guys, which is really fantastic. I'm going to check real quick to make sure I'm on track. So, I am on a different instruction sheet than you guys. Exit command. And I'm trying to keep myself on track by checking this regularly to make sure I don't miss anything for you guys. Another portion is that when you hover over any tool within here, it tells you what the tool does. And then if you hover really long, it gives you an even bigger explanation. So if you don't know what something is, or you're seeking something specific, this is a great way of trying to figure it out. Every tool has a description, and that's also where some of the resources that I provided on the guide itself. Every single command that you are taught has a link. If you click on that word for that command, it will take you to AutoCAD's website that explains how to do it. So if you've forgotten, you need a reference, a resource, that's the way to go. Awesome. And then the next point, the last point associated with the interface is that, where'd it go? Is the difference between model space and paper space. Currently, if you look in the bottom middle of your screen, it says model. This is, don't click it. Nobody said click it. I see all of you clicking it. I think you have to click it again to go back. No, you don't. Okay, so if you've clicked it on accident, you want to hover back over to where it says model on the far left-hand corner, the little tab, and select it to take you back to the land of the so bottom left-hand corner, make sure it says model. So if you noticed when you did click that, or if you do, the different tabs on the far left-hand corner are what toggle between model space and paper space. Everything past model is paper. And it's currently in model space, you work at a real scale, live size. So when something is 1 foot, you draw 1 foot. It's an indefinite space of empty abyss for drawing, which means you can make things as large as you want. So you want to make them the actual size that they are. And then once we get to paper space, which we will eventually, we will tackle that, that endeavor. It is a pretty little piece of paper, and you have to occupy it and tell it how to size and manipulate your line work to produce it and export it out of this program. Right now, we're going to stay in the land of model space, work on drafting and drawing stuff, the really rudimentary stuff. And then when we get to a level of comfort there, we'll work on how we get things out of AutoCAD. So next thing, are we at a point where anyone wants a break, or do we wait for after all interface stuff? Does anybody need a break? No, yes, no. Jess, does anyone need a break up there? Just checking. Okay, sweet. Just checking before I roll through. So the selection is the next part of CAD. So your crosshair is, you'll notice your cursor is like different than a mouse, right? It's a crosshair is what it's referred to as. You'll also notice if you attempt to click things, clicking is not as simple as just a single click of something. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It's a really fun game. So we're gonna go through. First is AutoCAD is a click, release, click type of program. There are very few instances, and it will be distinguished. You will very rarely click, hold, and drag to the next thing. You cannot move things like that very easily. There are some things you can and some things you can't. So it's best to default to click, release, and then you click your next point. So it's keep that in the back of your head. Anytime you're dragging, most likely it's not going to be right for the first couple of things you're going to be learning in here. So single select. So the practice selection section, you finally get to do something. Anytime you hover over something, it glows a pretty little white, like a lightsaber or something. Select, release, and that selects an item. You can do that with any of these items, select them, right? To deselect, you hold shift and you select on the line. And you can deselect things. If you've noticed, every time you select something, and go ahead and like try these things out, right? As you select items, it builds on the selection. It doesn't make the first selection disappear. So you have to tell it when to have things selected and when not to select them. And it wants to be told all this information. So once you've selected a handful of things, you can hold shift and deselect those items. Make sure that you are selecting specifically on lines, not on those fun little nodes that appear once you've selected something. Those grips and nodes work very similar to like images and shapes that are in other programs. Like say you put something in Word or PowerPoint, you put an image, and those grips allow you to like rescale items there. Here you can manipulate line work through those. So you cannot deselect items via the grips or the nodes. So that is single select. You can also completely deselect everything you have by pushing escape. Escape is your magic default. Does that make sense to everybody? Everyone capable of selecting? I know it seems so small. Everyone good? Any questions related to that? No? Cool. Okay. So then the next part is selecting lots of things all at the same time. So this is where I break the rule of the click and drag thing, because there is a click and release method and a click and drag method. So if you click somewhere in the abyss that is not a line, and it's click, I clicked once. I see someone tried to click and drag. Click and release, and then I start pulling my mouse without holding down anything. It creates a pretty box. The box is blue because I drug from left to right. If I push it the other way, or if someone else chose from the other side and theirs was green, those two different selection boxes do two different things. So your blue box only selects the things that are fully inside of the blue box from start to end. Every bit of it's in there. The green box selects anything and everything that touches that green box. Okay. So then the same thing applies to shift as well. So if I've selected all of these things here, if I hold shift and drag, it'll deselect everything with that same method. Now, the next portion is there's an irregular one. I avoid this at all costs most of the time. Feel free to play with it. If you click, hold, and drag, it makes this very weird irregular shape, right? So you can use this to go in niche spots and try and select specific things. And it is kind of difficult to finesse I avoid it. But this is one of those instances that click and drag is one of the, like, it is effective. It is there for a purpose. Other than that, it should be a click release situation. The selection makes sense to everybody. Easy enough. Cool. Jess, you chill. Jess.
Yep.
Okay, just checking.
Sorry, there's a lag.
You're good, no worries. So we went over holding shift to deselect things, and then escape deselects all. Let's play with delete. So select things. It's as simple as just pushing the delete key to make things disappear. I know that seems silly to explain. And then we're going to go over undo after you've deleted these things. So delete a couple items. And then the same way as in Adobe products and a bunch of other programs, Control Z will get you out of any mess and bring it back. Cool. You can also, we'll go over when we start learning the commands, but there's a command for undo. You can literally type in the words undo and it will undo your last actions as well. But it's a lot easier and faster and causes less issues. Just use Control Z. And then we're going to attempt to modify some of these lines. So like I said, the grips on here, these little blue squares and rectangles, if you select one of those, click and release, no dragging, then the dragging, if you attempt it, you still have to click again to make an action happen. So you might as well click and release because that's what it is used to and wants. But you pick up anything from that spot, and then you can click elsewhere and it will move there. That's for small nodes and grips. You can also modify things. So let's see, you select, for instance, the triangle. If you select the triangle, and if you were to hover over any one of these grips for a second, it has an option to stretch it, which is the same as you clicking and moving it, but add vertex. So I can add new points to manipulate that shape. If I hover over and find the drop down and then choose add vertex, and the same thing for removing them. I can hover over it and then say remove vertex and it will go back to normal. So this is an easy way of if you've made a very long series of lines and you don't want to start breaking them, this is how you can manipulate them. And then scrolling, this might be stupid. All you use is your scroll wheel to zoom in and out. There's a command for it as well to control this a little bit more than just, or if you don't have a scroll wheel on your mouse for whatever reason, if you're working on a laptop or something. But this is one of the biggest like hindrances from working on a laptop is working on a trackpad is really difficult for AutoCAD. So ideally you want to be with a scroll and a mouse, scrolling in and out. And then next is if you press your scroll down and you'll see that a hand appears when you press that scroll. And then that is your pan tool to scooch you around and navigate. So between scrolling and panning, you should be able to move around a bunch of things. Additionally, your scrolling works a lot like a camera. So whichever way, wherever you put that crosshair, just like a camera, you point it and start scrolling, it's going to go the direction of where your crosshair is placed. So if you want to navigate specifically to a location, put your crosshair there, then begin to scroll. And the last of this section is the properties box. So this is going to be your first command, I believe, and it's also in the bar. So here is what the tool is, but we're going to have you type it in instead. So type in the word properties. You can just start typing and it'll automatically appear. And if you see that's in the list, you can stop typing at any point and go and select it from the list, or you can just complete the word and push enter or space. And once you've done that, it pops up a bar. Remember, we got the bar, fun bar. Yes, bueno, no problems, cool. So then this bar, similar to your command bar, can be moved around. It's moved by the far left, that darker blue big band can be moved around. A lot of people like to dock things. This is similar to Adobe products. You can push it to the edge of your screen and wait for it to highlight and then release, and it will dock it permanently. And then you can change and rescale it, same way as toolbars and other programs as well. So you can grab the edges, hover over it and pull. And And then if you look at the top, you can close this. When you close it, it disappears into the abyss. You can either use your ribbon button up here. I think you, no, you cannot. It's this one. No. Never mind, don't use the ribbon button. Good, I don't like the button anyways. I'm guessing it's on a different tab. So if you type in properties, and if you notice, when you start typing in anything, they have shorter, so you see the PR at the top, properties, every command has a even shorter term, so you don't have to remember an entire word or a series of words to tell it what to do. PR is enough and it knows, you can push and enter, and it opens that bar back up where the last place you had it. And then you can minimize as well with that little arrow. So if you click that arrow and minimize it, then it makes it to where it says properties on the side, and then you can hover over it and it pops back up. And then whenever you hover away from it, it goes away and disappears. I like to dock a billion different bars on the side. So this is useful to make them disappear in and out so it doesn't take up your whole screen. Okay, so that's the basic of the interface. So like I said, in your guide sheet, if you look, like pan is an actual command. So if you were to select any of the words in here that are highlighted blue and underlined, it will take you to Autodesk's website that tells you what the heck this is and how it works, and what the icons look like in your interface related to it, to help you remember if you forget anything. And then also, if you forget anything, I've provided all of the LinkedIn Learning /Lynda videos as well for application related stuff if you just need to reference these things later just to help you out. And I'm thinking it's 5-minute break, 10-minute break. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like this gets mind numbing at a certain point. So why don't we do a 5-minute break? So it's instead of keep going and instead of 10-minute break, we're going to compromise at 5. Cool. Let's do 5-minute break. Feel free to scroll around, practice selecting things, deselecting things, or actually go to the restroom and take a break for a second. So yeah, let's do 3:40. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Okay. Get to start, Jess?
Yep, we're good.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna actually start drawing things with more purpose and intent rather than scooting things. So scroll out and you're gonna scroll to the next box over from the practice selection thing. And we're gonna scroll in a little. So we're gonna start with our first command. It's gonna be circle. That's kind of one of the easier ones to start. So you're just gonna start typing the word circle. All right. Push enter to activate that command. And then if you notice in the command prompt bar, it now says circle and it gives you a little bit of prompter instructions on where to go next. This is a great spot to look and check whether or not, like if you don't remember what the points are that you need to do or what you need to click to get a command going, this is a good spot to check and read it through and see. A lot of the or options we will probably skip for the time being, but the or options give you even further and more complicated versions of that current command. So you could do things like tan radius of a circle is where you select another circle and another curve, and then you tell it the radius and it makes a circle perfectly tangent to both of those curves. So that's a little more complicated than just drawing a simple circle. So that's just for your knowledge, it's there. You'll also notice that once you've started a command, the crosshairs no longer have the fun little square in the middle. That's also another way to show that a command is active and it is one track mind. If the command's active, it will not do anything else except make this circle for you, okay? So select anywhere inside this box and you'll notice it starts the prompt of, okay, how big do you want this circle? Same way in a lot of drawing programs. You do not have to hold down. Remember, it's a simple click once you get it, and then you can release and you have a free form circle. And then after that point, if you read in the command prompt, it says specify radius of circle or diameter. So tell it how big you'd like it to be. So if you type in 5, it's going to be 5. If I do the circle command again, if I click somewhere and I say, oh, make it 10 for my radius, it's going to be double the size or more than that. Right, so one of your practice drawing things is just make a circle that has a radius of 10. Pretty easy, pretty simple. So you type in your command. You can also cheat. Anytime you do a command and you leave a command, you can push enter into the abyss and it'll automatically start the last command that you had. So since I made a circle last, if I push enter, it'll automatically start the circle command without me having to type it. So if you're doing a lot of redundant same command over and over again, just push enter. So you draw a circle, tell it to be 10, easy enough. Next one is polyline. You'll notice at the top left, there's a line and a polyline. Lines are kind of independent features and they don't play with others. They stay independently. So if you look over here, if you look at this square where when I select one line, it selects all of them because that's a shape. This shape is comprised of multiple lines, a polyline. So that's what a polyline is it's multiple pieces that comprise one big line versus if I select this, it's just one segment, each segment of this. That's how a line kind of works. It doesn't work. So if I want to start moving line work later or making cohesive friends with lines, it's a lot more difficult to manipulate lines. So it's easier to just default to using a polyline all the time. So polyline, you can type in the whole word. You can type in P-line or PL. All of those work for your commands. If you notice, I provide the short keys for all of these. So you can type in any of these 3 words and it will start that command for you. So I'm going to type in PL, enter. It starts my polyline. If you specify the start point, so that means click and release somewhere, and you start drawing a line. You can draw many lines off of each other. Every click you have makes a new line, okay? Anytime you push enter or escape, it'll stop. So it stops at that point. So if I just like to draw one line for right now, just like one of these lines that I like to avoid, you can do the same thing just by clicking and pushing enter or escape, and you have a single line as well. So polylines do the best of both worlds. So it's best to just do those on their own. And then as well, if you start a polyline and you start drawing and say you want it to be a perfect shape, perfectly closed, rather than going over here and trying to close the shape, if you just look in your command prompt bar, one of the or options is close. You can either select this option in the command bar, or you can type in the highlighted blue letter, and that will activate that part of the command. So if I type C, enter, automatically closes it for you, makes the shape. Cool. And then we get to play with one of the fun tools at the bottom that I made to turn off. So at the bottom in the status bar, if you find the right angle with a little square in it and select it to make sure that it is highlighted light blue, this is called ortho. So if you hover over it, ortho constricts your cursor to only work in 90 degrees, north, south, east, west. You cannot tell it's doing that until you're drawing any type of line work or shapes. So if I start my polyline, PL, enter, select anywhere. If you notice my cursor, I have it all the way off at a 45-degree angle. It is not going there. It's only going north, south, east, west. Okay. So this is how you make perfect shapes and perfect geometry, trying to get everything straight rather than making wonky, irregular shapes over here. So I'll go ahead and have you take a second to use Polyline if you haven't already, to draw a 40 by 10 rectangle using a polyline. So what you'll do is, so far you've distinguished a bunch of line work. In order to tell it how far you'd like it to go or distinguish the dimension of it, all you have to do is type in the number before clicking. So instead of clicking and choosing where it goes, if I put my cursor in the direction I'd like to go, so I want it to go this way and it needs to be 10 wide, I simply type in 10, and you see it appears in the command prompt bar, that 10 does, and I push enter. And now if I move my cursor, I have that 10 length associated with it. Now, if I want it to be 40 tall, then I'm going to move my cursor either down or up, either way, down, and then I'm going to type in 40. 40, enter, then over to the left, 10, enter. And sometimes it helps that the information adjacent to your crosshair, it's providing XY coordinates and degrees and all sorts of information all the time. Sometimes that gets in the way. So if you move it really extreme, move your cursor to an extreme north, south, east, west, out of the way, it's helpful. Now from here, I can type in 40 again, or I could just choose close. So I can do C, enter, and now I have my 40 by 10 wide rectangle. Perfect. Is that good for everybody? I don't know, I'm stumped on that. I know. Sweet.
Sorry, we're hoping some kids up here.
You're good.
So yeah, we're working on that up here.
Oh, I should also mention with the ortho, that tool down at the bottom, you'll be stuck in that 90 degree until you turn that tool off. So you'll be stuck using only 90 degrees. You turn that off at any point. You can even turn it off while you're drawing things and it won't hurt anything. So if you start lines that you want to be perfect and straight, and then you're like, nah, I want it to be a different direction now, I'm still in the polyline command and I can deselect ortho. And from this point on, I can draw jagged, crazy lines. And so you can turn that on and off as needed. Additionally, this is one thing I haven't been doing for a while because I've been on my laptop too long, but if you push F8 at the top of your keyboard, it turns that on and off super easy. So if you just toggle between them, on laptops, a lot of the time there's like volume and other things associated with your F keys, so it's really annoying to do. But when you're on a PC, it's super nice to be able to start drawing something, draw a bunch of lines, push F8, and quickly toggle between them without having to go to that button. Just let me know whenever you get to a point.
Almost there. Did you go over rectangle yet?
No.
No, okay, perfect. Let me double check real quick with everyone, and then we should be good. Nope, that's one more that whole.
Yes, I was.
Oh, okay, good. I said a student asked. We're almost there.
Okay. Very annoying. You good yet, Jess?
We are good to go for rectangle.
Awesome. Okay, next one, rectangle. Can anyone guess what you have to type in to make a rectangle?
Rectangle.
Yeah, oh, brilliant. It's rectangle. So if you start typing in rectangle, you'll see it finishes itself with rectangle or rec. Click that. And now it says specify first corner point. This is one of those ones we'll probably avoid the ors for right now. So select the first starting point and you'll see just like the circle, it kind of creates an automatic one for you. And then you can either free for all, click and make your rectangle, but that it defeats the purpose of precision, right? You need to know how big it is. So deleting that, and then I'm going to start my rectangle command again. I'll click. So instead, we'd like to know how large this is actually going to be. So we're going to use the or dimension. So once you've started it, you have the option of specifying dimensions for it. So you can either select this or type D, enter. Now it says specify the length for rectangles. I'm pretty sure you'll discover this if you get a little eager. If you type in the amount for length, enter, 10, enter, and then my width is 40. You'll notice I said my width was 40, yet it is 40 tall. So I don't know why AutoCAD kind of switch it, like what you normally would consider width and length are flipped for AutoCAD. So when you attempt to draw your 40 by 10 wide rectangle, just note that you might have to do it more than once to attempt to get those dimensions on the right side. After you've typed in those dimensions, put in the dimension, enter, put in the dimension, enter. Now you have a free form. It allows you to clip it which direction you'd like to go after that point. So once you hover and get it where you'd like it to be, and then you click once, doesn't matter where, because it's already defined the dimensions, then your rectangle is done and completed. And you'll note that your polyline and your actual rectangle command, they look like friends, they're the same. So you'll note that it is successful at that point. Cool. So go ahead and start the rectangle command and attempt to get a friend for your polyline rectangle that matches.
Lucy are good up here.
Wait up. Everybody have, they're both polyline and they're rectangle command based rectangle. Does anybody not need assistance? Yeah, 1 second, Jess.
Oh, I love this. We just fixed this over there. I will. So what you did, you know, is you played with something that you're not supposed to. So width is not what you want to touch. Any of the ones in the first ones, you don't want to touch this, that's the width of the line. That's why it says thing. So once you click for your first point, you click, then you can choose dimensions and then enter the width of the line.
So just as a note, be really careful of that list of ors, and pay attention to when or which I do tell you to select. So dimension is the one that you needed for rectangle. If you access, and this applies for any other command. So polyline, if you select one of the other ors, sometimes it can really distort your line work. And it likes to remember those settings. So once you've left the command, the next time you use it, sometimes it will still be distorted. So be very careful with which ones you decide to go down that path. Normally, Jess or I can fix those pretty easily for you, but it's difficult for you guys to remember or have to attempt to search online later if you were on your own time playing with AutoCAD and trying to figure out what you've done wrong. It's a lot more difficult to start Google searching those things. Okay, so we should have a circle and 2 rectangles. Bueno, this is my favorite part. So now you're going to use rectangle, circle. I don't know why this is still here. It should not say line. You're not using lines, you're using polylines. Ortho, pan, zoom, whatever. And you are going to attempt to draw this Jeep. So trace, we're going to give you like 5 to 10 minutes. I'm not saying the whole thing needs to be completed. Just attempt to start using those commands that you've just been given, circle, rectangle, and that polyline. You can turn ortho on and off during that point and attempt to draw this Jeep and trace it on the outside. Note that all of the features that are in these exercises, I have specifically put in a magical space where they are left so that you cannot manipulate them. And so if you do select this item, a little lock up here, as you can see, you cannot push it or move it. And then whenever you attempt to, it will fail. But you can accidentally select it. It's okay to accidentally select it. It doesn't break anything, and you can start drawing even with it accidentally selected. So don't worry too much about it. Push escape if you'd like to deselect everything, right? And get out of that. So go ahead and start drawing, start sketching around it. So yeah, we're gonna get, we'll say till. Whenever you select grips on your polylines and try to move them, if you have ortho still turned on, that one at the bottom right hand corner, F8, if you have that turned on, it will restrict where you can move lines as well as where you draw them. So if you notice, and it'll actually say in a little gray box next to your cursor, it'll say ortho when you're trying to move things and try to tell you that you're being restricted. So for whatever reason, you can't move your cursor the direction you'd like to, it's because most likely because you have ortho on. Cool.
So that's the way that you can, is you want to hover over the square and point here. So hover over it for a second. And then we remove our text. And then hover over it again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a tip for since you're just learning, sometimes it's a lot easier. What is that noise? not coming out of this, right? Maybe it's Jess's thing. Jess, I don't know if you have your thingamajig turned on.
You hear a mic?
Yes.
Yeah, no, we hear it too, and my thing has not been on. Yeah, the building is there.
It's a horrible noise. Just as a tip, sometimes it's easier rather than drawing lots of lines that are all continuing, since you don't know how to break things nicely and with purpose. Currently, sometimes it's easier to just draw single lines. So start the polyline command, end it, start it again. Okay. That noise sucks. Makes you think it's a projector, but okay, so wherever you're at, go ahead and stop. You don't need to have it perfect because you're about to learn. That fun thing in math, whenever someone showed, like your teacher showed you the really long, crappy way, and then 2 seconds later, they let you suffer and then they show you the way easier way. That's what just happened. So you just had to go through drawing the Jeep. And you're probably, if you zoom in to any one of the corners that you've drawn, most likely your lines do not line up perfectly. If you start zooming in and really scrolling in to the nitty gritty, none of your stuff actually lines up, right? It's close, but it's not perfect. And the point of AutoCAD is precision. So we are going to learn O-snaps. O-snaps are a super fun tool. So one of the things I made you turn off in the beginning, along with ortho, right, is your object snaps, O-snaps, and that is F3 on your keyboard. This one you will be using constantly all the time. It is your best friend. It does all the work for you. So if you go ahead and select it to highlight it blue, but then if you go over to the right and you click the drop-down list, there is a list of all these things. Some of you accidentally had your O-snaps on and you were seeing the repercussions, but because you didn't know what they did, it was detrimental. So if you look at any of these, we're gonna actually turn on the ones that I think are super crucial and turn off the ones that aren't. So you're gonna make sure that there's a check mark next to endpoint. Make sure that one's on. Center needs to be on. We're gonna go ahead and turn on quadrant. We're gonna turn off intersection and extension. And I think that is all we need. I put a cheat sheet in here so I remembered. Put midpoint just in case. Oh, here, maybe midpoint. I don't think it's necessary for y'all right now, but we'll put it on just in case. Okay. So each of those you'll turn on and off and toggle as you need. Sometimes it's really annoying. Some of you notice this when you accidentally had it turned on, because your cursor will snap over to new locations. If you've used like InDesign or anything that have smart guides and your cursor is naturally drawn to them to line up things nicely, that's what O-snaps do. They kind of pull your cursor to the location that it's trying to highlight. So if you're not intentionally trying to find the endpoint, midpoint, or center of a circle and your cursor is being pulled there, it's very frustrating. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how these impact drawing and making them more precise. We're going to start with a circle. So if I type in circle, enter, find the purpose of this circle, right, is it says it asks for the center point. Well, when you originally were making these circles, you just click somewhere in the middle, right, and you try to get close. Well, now if you hover over the edge of a circle, it'll make a cross in the middle of that circle. And it has to be whenever you've got like a drawing command started, okay? Or pretty much any command needs to be activated for these to start going, right? So then if I move my cursor over to that cross, there's a green circle. Any of these green icons are snaps. They're indicating and giving you information like, hey, this is where you want to be, this is that spot. So circles are the center point of circles. If you notice when I hover over any edge point of a circle, these diamonds come up. The diamonds are the quadrants. And if you look in your O-snap list, you'll notice these little symbols next to it are kind of indicators to show you what that symbol would actually look like when you're looking for it. So if you forget what the quadrant snap is or which one's what, this list kind of helps you a little bit to kind of show what it looks like. So your quadrants is every circle is broken up into quadrants, and it's just giving you those 4 corner points, something to snap to that edge. So I am going to click the center point for a circle, and then I can snap and click and hover where that green point is and click there. And now I have a perfect circle. It is exactly on the line to the point of like complete accuracy. And the same thing, I do circle again, enter, and I hover in the middle till I get that green, click, and pull out to the outside circle and find one of those green snaps for the outside and click. And I have those perfect circles. The next ones that you'll want to use, you'll use primarily for like your polylines and things like that. So if I start my polyline command, if I hover over the center of any line segment, there's going to be a triangle. That's your midpoint. So that's a midpoint snap. If you want to find exactly what half is of any line, you hover over that, and that's your midpoint. And then the square, the perfect square, is endpoints, any endpoint line segment. So those nodes that you were snapping to, when you select the polyline and you see the small rectangle in the middle and the 2 squares on the outside, it's basically highlighting these, but pulling your cursor to it so that it's perfect. So I can select at any one of those points. Yeah.
When I do the circle function, the circle's not showing up. Like it's just like.
Yeah, let me check it out real quick. This is a general tip. Regen or regenerate is a command. A lot of people use this. If things start disappearing or not showing correctly, some people really use this as a fallback to blame CAD that things are broken and they're like, regen will fix it. But if you can't see things, sometimes if your graphics card can't keep up with all the stuff you're doing in CAD, it will start showing things poorly and not accurate. And so sometimes if you've got visual issues, you'll type in REGEN, it's regenerate, and you push enter, and it's kind of like a refresh button. So that's just a good tip to have, not a necessity command, but it'll help you out sometimes. Cool. So has everyone go ahead and if you're comfortable to go ahead and start drawing, you might actually notice that you can trace this Jeep in 2 whole seconds once you have these snaps, and it will be perfect and precise, and it is beautiful. You can also attempt to toggle on and off those, maybe practice drawing the circles and then turning off the circles snaps, like the center snap and the quadrant snap, and then just use your endpoint ones and get some practice toggling those on and off, because you'll notice later when you start drawing more complicated things, if you have a lot of line work and your cursor is bouncing from a billion different points and all you're trying to do is click right here and it wants to snap to everything, it's very frustrating. So you got to get in the habit of being able to turn those ones on and off and get comfortable with it.
I think you have the same problem Josh is having, where you click on the center point, it snaps, and then you expand it, and when you click it, you enter it, it doesn't.
Let me see. Let me look.
So you're looking for the center one, so you see it highlighted.
Yeah.
The center one is only finding the center for you. So you have to go to this list and you can keep the command going. Now click once out of here, close this menu, and you go right next to where you see that quadrant. Right there. Cool.
So just as a reminder, that center of snap, the one for circles, it only finds the center of that circle. To get the outside snap, you have to use a snap that will find that edge. The center only finds the middle of something. So then you'll start looking, and quadrant will help you select the edge of a circle. To see what my next one is. So everyone, just let me know if you've generally got everything laid out. Also, for those of you that have gotten to a point where you're like, yeah, I've got this down, and you've done the other exercises, I see a couple of you. If you want, Jess has published the assignment that will be associated with today's stuff. And we were already planning on allotting time in class to be able to work on it to make sure we get all those kinks out and questions. But there is an assignment 1. I guess I need to refresh if that one is happening. that assignment 1 is in here. You'll be drawing and tracing a detail, or not tracing, you'll be drawing a detail to specific dimensions and stuff. So if you wanted to start taking a stab at that, if you've already gotten to that point, feel free to. Those of you that haven't, we're still going to provide some time to get that started. So don't stress if you're not as speedy. It's totally fine. We're going to have time for it. So don't worry about it.
We are good to go here.
Cool. Does anybody need a little bit of extra time to finish tracing that Jeep with your O snaps? Speak now, or I will blow past into the next thing. Good. Awesome. Great. Okay. Next one. Copy and paste and move, which seems so silly and small, but we are going to run through it. I'm going to break rules here to save myself some time here. Nobody pays attention to what I'm doing. There we go. Okay. So here's that line work that you drew, right? All those little lines, things that you've made. We're going to learn how to copy things and how to move things. Both of these commands are friends with each other. They work pretty much identical. Just one produces a copy and leaves a copy in the other place, right? So let's start with move. With a lot of commands that are modifying. So if you notice up here, it says draw, up here it says modify. Drawing is obviously drawing tools. Modify is modifying existing things that are already drawn. Modification tools, you can either choose to select the thing you choose to modify first, then move through the command, type in the command and go through the command's prompts, or you can type in the command and then make the prompt it'll provide the instructions to say, hey, select the things in, let me check my phone, sorry, to select the things that you would like to modify or move at that point. So choose which order. I'm going to go ahead and do the selection portion first. So I'm going to use that big green window to just get all of it. So I click to the right-hand side of an element in the abyss somewhere, drag across until all of the items are highlighted, and then click once, and I have my entire Jeep selected. Let's see, move the Jeep. So we're going to move it over. Move. Anyone want to guess what the command is? It's move. It's that simple. You can type in M if you'd like. The symbol for it is this bad boy up here. So M, enter, super simple. Also, your commands don't like to listen to you if you're hovering over active nodes, just as a tip. It didn't move for me. So move, enter. Now it says, if you look up here in this gray text, it says 32 found. So it took my command and it said, hey, we found all those things you had selected. And then it says specify the base point. So you then get to choose the grip or the spot that you'd like to displace it by. So it's very similar to, you have to physically pick up the object, take it somewhere, and then release it. And each of those pick up and release is a click. So nothing is the click and drag. Unfortunately, that's very intuitive for move, and that is not what works here. So I'm going to grab maybe by the bottom quadrant of this wheel, right? And click. So now I picked it up by that quadrant. What's nice is then I could go, like, I could find this midpoint of this big rectangle and nicely sit it on like a little road or something silly. And I choose where it is placed by clicking once more. So I clicked and I've moved my Jeep from over here to into here. Does anyone have issues with that? Should be pretty cut and dry. What's funny is I did a test run with my mom trying to see how long this stuff would take. That was very complicated apparently. So this is way better. Does anyone have any issues moving? Understand it? Grasp it? Cool. We're gonna try copy. Now you can do copy and paste the same way as other programs with the Control-C, Control-V. Okay. So you can select all the objects, Control-C, Control-V. The downside of doing that, so I'll show you, I'm going to select all these items and not that square. I'm going to select all these items and I'm going to say Control-C and then Control-V. I don't get to choose where that grip point is. And right now that really doesn't matter for you of which point you move it by. But later when you're very strategically trying to sit something like a tree and you want to put it directly in a tree well, Well, if it automatically snaps to the edge and you want it to be snapped from the center so that you put it directly in the center of something, it's very useless to just do Control C, Control V, and you don't get to control that point. But you can do this method. But the next method is you select all of the things, you type in copy. Super easy to remember. That's the beauty of the commands based, like everyone defaults to those buttons because you're so used to buttons, but it's very slow. If you can get those commands memorized, which isn't very difficult for a lot of these, like some of the basics, then it makes you a way more efficient draftsman. So now I've typed copy and it says specify base point. So say if I want to stack this Jeep right on top of the roof of the other one, I'm going to choose it maybe by this quadrant. And then I hover and I find like the midpoint and I sit it on the roof of this Jeep and I click the same actions as the move. Click once for the base point, find the new location, and then click again to place the next one. Simple. Everyone got it? Make sure that you get all of the pieces every time. So I've noticed some of you have selected things, you use this window, or you accidentally, like this window, for instance, it's very easy to leave things behind when you use it. Make sure you get everything. Sometimes it's nice to start the command prior to selecting things, for instance, like move, enter. Now it says select objects. Sometimes it's nice to do it this way because it highlights it blue and you can check as you're going that you've got all the pieces that you intend to move. So whichever way works best for you, that's the way to go. So has everybody done that? Everyone got the 2 Jeeps, all their pieces, everything good? Yes, no issues. Questions on anything collectively? No, that's fantastic. The speed of this went dramatically quicker than I expected. So that's really nice because we just assumed like the worst. Okay, so the last part is you're gonna screenshot this and submit it on Canvas real quick, just to show that you came, you participated, you attempted to learn this stuff. If you don't come to class for whatever reason in the future related to this class, we're gonna ask that you attempt whatever exercise. And you can see that the instructions are here and then the instructions in the guide that help you learn each tool, because you can click each one of those and then we'll be providing the recording as well. You'll be asked to attempt to pull up the exercise and go through each of the little things that we create for whichever class that help you learn, and do a screenshot just to go, hey, I attempted this, so that you get the same credit and we know that you're on the same par for the next class, ready to learn, and you're at the same level as everybody else. So you'll go ahead and use screenshot. You can either do the fun tool. Was it Jake? Yeah, perfect. I love that I remembered a single name. We're gonna use window and print screen, and it will take a screenshot and save it in your file explorer under pictures in screenshot, and you can save that. Like I said before, we didn't get to run through the pretty OneDrive situation, but please, please, please consider what you name things and where you place them. We have requirements for what you name them. This helps prep you for more stringent classes later. Once you get into grading and stormwater, and in an office, you're expected to have nice, neatly named things. You need to do that. So there's an example of what your file should be named. We also have file size limits to help prepare you for other classes and for big kid land. There's no reason these should exceed anything by being just a quick JPEG, but as we move further, if there's any other file types and stuff, this will be helpful for you to be mindful of how big your file is, what file type it is, and what it is named. So all you do is, once you have saved that screenshot, go to exercise 1 and submit a copy of that screenshot. Make sure everything's visible in that screenshot. We don't need to see the selection one because obviously you haven't done a whole lot there, right? So just zoom into those far right 3 squares, get a photo of it, and submit it on there. Once you've done that, you can navigate over to, yeah, what's up?
So can we download it as a PDF? Is it like the document, or do we have to save it?
Download what as a PDF?
Like a screenshot, every page is gonna check. Are we able to turn it into a PDF?
No, so just turn it in as the JPEG or PNG. Oh, I need to check to see if PNG is an option because I noticed the screenshot was saving. Jess, are you speaking? Was she speaking? No, I don't think so. Maybe I have a voice in my head now. That's cool. Let me check to see what file types. I am pretty sure it only allows JPEGs. I will allow PNGs to go. Oh, it says there's no reason. I feel like it would be extra work in order to make it a PDF.
I made a PDF because the student couldn't get JPEG to work, and I cannot figure out why it wasn't working either.
Couldn't figure it out. Okay, perfect. Interesting. What method are you using to screenshot this? I'm gonna look real quick.
Yeah, like I said, just go for the far right three ones. So the ones we agree. And then- Yeah. So you can change And it opens it. Change the name of it, move it wherever your files are located. So you have your OneDrive there now. So if you wanted to place it in your OneDrive. And part of your homework will also be really tedious and annoying, making a nice file structure that says this semester and all your classes in it and screenshot it. It's silly and dumb, but if you already are an organized team, then you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so now we're going to do not, it's all the options are, and yeah, all of them are on there, not just one, everybody. Did you do the screenshot? Did you see it with the Windows key? Which one? Okay, so then you have to open Word. Paste it in. Oh, you did that, and then you right click. Oh, you're in, you're not in Word, you're in, Word is here on the. You did that. Where it goes, it's got one guy working on the computer, you have to save it in there. And then you can access it cloud-based, which is really nice. Later, for other assignments, not this one, obviously, you're not gonna need this for a portfolio anytime soon. Okay. So go ahead and let me know if you have any issues with that and I can help you through it. For the rest of you, hop into the assignment that is assignment 1 associated with this date as well. You've got instructions for a file structure, which is tedious and dumb, but it's mandatory and I like it being mandatory. It's beautiful to have organization mandatory. And then the next one is we're going to introduce, you're going to have this reference image, which I'm really curious on why this looks like that. Anyone else have issues downloading this or not? Did anyone attempt to download this first link?
Yeah, same.
Cool, I love that. Let's fix it. I'm glad we're going through this. I'm going to remove the link and just as a heads up, when these links don't work or if they don't work, all of these are sitting in the files and we organized an AutoCAD folder in the files of Canvas. You should not have to do that and I don't want to rely on that by any means. But I just as a solid backup, I'd like that, like y'all to know. Let's try it out. Okay, so if anyone wants to try push and refresh. Something that. There we go. Yeah. So like I said, just as a heads up, all of these are sitting in files. If the link goes to crap, then in AutoCAD, we've organized them based off assignments and exercise. And they're chilling in here, ready for you. So your assignment is simply drawing a, I can find the file that I just attempted to download. You're going to draw a wall detail. So we've taken something that's somewhat typical detail of a wall and what that would look like to construct. Why is it still doing that? So the first portion, you're gonna follow and make your folder structure look like this. It's gonna be great. You're gonna love it. You're gonna screenshot it and stick it on there. How's that for easy points? Then the next part is you're gonna look at this wall detail. You do not have to provide anything text related, or if you know what a dimension is, dimension lines, or the leader lines with the arrows, you do not need to provide that part. But you are going to open a fresh document, a fresh AutoCAD, and then go ahead and do this. I'm going to walk through this part. You need to set the units of the file, and we're going to discuss what that looks like. I'll give you a brief overview of what that means, but we won't go too deep down that path of understanding units. Primarily, when you work in model space, if you're working with plans, like document plans, plan view, you're working in feet. So the number that you type in, you'll notice that when you drew a rectangle, for instance, I didn't put tick marks for whether or not it's feet or inches, because it can be either or, and you're gonna have to learn how to distinguish these in a file at a certain point. So if you open up AutoCAD and type in units, enter, brings up this fun little dialog box, and adjacent to your instructions, I've given, where is it? I've given you instructions on what it should be set as. And then in your exercise, we were gonna like dive deep into this, but we were a little worried about how complicated it might seem initially when you're just learning drafting stuff. So we knocked it down a bit in terms of complexity. So right here, for drawing plans, normally you work in decimal, which means that you don't get halves, or it doesn't say, instead of saying 5 foot and this many inches, it says 5.5 feet. So you work in decimal, and that one can be altered a little bit, but this is general. And then that's feet is what the insertion scale is set to. When you're drawing a detail, like your assignment for your homework, that's a construction detail. It is a smaller section view of something. Those are normally set to architectural and inches. So if we go back to AutoCAD, currently your file was set up for your exercise, for instance, in decimal and feet, because we're just working in general. It's kind of a good standard. Unfortunately, brand new AutoCAD files default to inches, which could be beneficial for your homework. To start a brand new file, you're going to just go up to the top and push new. This prompts you for a template that stores, just use the default AutoCAD template. These are things that AutoCAD automatically stashes in your computer. So you push open and you have a brand new drawing, empty abyss of nothing. You zoom out indefinitely, nothing. You type in units, it normally defaults to inches, which drives me bonkers. For drawing your detail, you want to set it to say architectural, which means then you notice how it now has ticks. So you went from decimal, where it just says a number with a decimal running after it. If I change it to architectural, it now says this many feet, tick, this many inches, 2 ticks, and expresses it architecturally. The precision is the level of nitty gritty that you're it's going to allow you to put in. So you don't really need to get down to crazy. You could probably set all of these to 0 feet, 0 inches, or half or something. But this is how nitty gritty you're going to get with your dimensions and how big you're drawing things. After that, you're good to go and start drawing your things related to your dimensions and your detail. So you push OK. and that set the units for the file. Now, every time I draw, like if I start drawing a polyline, click, everything I draw, I have to type accordingly. So if I do 2 feet with, and if you see my command prompt bar, 2 feet, enter, zoom in, this should be 2 feet. This is where the properties bar comes into play, or the properties box that I had you open. So if you had closed it, go ahead and type in properties to open it back up. But if you look at it, you can select something and it will tell you the properties of that thing. So if I scroll down to the length, it says 2 feet. So I know that thing is 2 feet long. Additionally, anybody that's turned off the dynamic input, some of you accidentally left it on, and that's totally chill. The dynamic input button down at the bottom right, the plus and the little rectangle, if you turn that one on, you'll now be able to see what you're typing in as you go across. So if you drag it to a certain point, do not rely on that number and just click once you see that dimension. Type it in, but it's good to, it helps you gauge where it is. So if I turned on ortho and I want something to be 2 foot, I type in 2 feet, enter, and you'll see it come up next to the cursor. So that'll help you start drawing. Okay, so that's what that dynamic input is, that your cursor now has a bunch of extra bonus information. When you're doing simple drawings and stuff, you don't really need it all on. When things get a little more complicated, then it gets useful sometimes. So each command, you'll have new data next to it. If you keep this one on, you can turn it on and off as you need it. So what you'll do is you're going to be referencing the homework. You'll be referencing this image or the big image that was downloaded. And you want to draw this. So you'll look at something, and if you zoom in, and we've provided a nice, pretty, like this full 11 by 17, I think, so that you can really zoom in and look at the nitty gritty of everything. But say this top cap is 1 foot 7 inches, and then this portion is 3 inches. So you could choose to use a polyline, you could choose to use a rectangle, take a pick. It doesn't matter which one you'd like. So if I started a polyline and I want to draw 3 inches down, so 3, I believe it defaults to inches. So if I didn't put any tick marks, it's going to default to inches, I believe. And I'm going to check that. So I pushed enter and left the command. I'm selecting the line, and I'm going to go look down here in my properties, and it says 3 inches. So if I type in a number with no ticks whatsoever, it's defaulting to inches because your units in this file are inches. If I do my polyline and I use my endpoint snap to find the end of that so that it starts back in a nice clean spot, click, and I want 1 foot 7 inches to match that PDF. So 1 foot 7 inches, enter. Now it's done that, and then 3 inches back up, and then I'd snap to my endpoint. There's that first cap. Where's my image? There's that first portion, okay? Then we also provided like this little zoom in so you can see things that you might not be able to tell how large they are over here. So attempt to start drawing some of these things. If you'd like to start at the bottom and that's easier, and do your 6 foot by 2.4 layer of gravel, it would be in this rectangle, and each of these pieces. So start drafting, start drawing, look at these images on Canvas, get a feel for what you're looking at. Open up, if you haven't already, open an AutoCAD file, get the unit set properly to inches and architectural. And then once you've got that, start referencing this image and attempt to draw. The goal is that you shouldn't have to leave this class with things to do outside of class related to AutoCAD right now. Ideally, we don't want to have you doing stuff and drowning. You've got Studio, you've got other things. Our goal is to have you learn all this stuff, practice learning the stuff all in class, and attempt to get majority of it knocked out in here. And added bonus, you have the ability to ask your instructors, me or Jess, questions as you attempt this. So if you could pull up your assignment 1 and get rolling on it and attempting it and starting it, and the rest of the class would just be free time for that and working on that. Does that work? Any questions? And this portion will be due, I want to say it's Friday at midnight. but it really shouldn't be a grind, especially seeing how quickly a lot of y'all are naturally picking up some of this stuff, and moving through. Shouldn't be too bad. Cool. Jess, do you have anything? Jess, I'm gonna mute myself. Just let me know if you need anything. Stop speaking. Here we go. I'm gonna run through real quick, making the little curve that is chilling right over here, super teeny tiny, something small, in the simplest manner to show you, is changing the vertex. You remember whenever I said you could hover over each individual item, right? And it'll say you can add or remove vertexes or stretch them. If you hover over a middle vertex, it will give you the option to convert to arc. So you can do convert to arc. And now it is stretchy and allows you to warp it to be an arc. So you'll do the same thing for that one portion of the cap. So whenever the cap is this, and you've got, you know, your brick and these pieces, and the things in between, you can simply draw a line between your cap and your the next line up. Use ortho. Turn my snaps off. Click, select the line, hover over the midpoint, convert to arc, and use it as a little arc. Cool. I also noticed that I was really inclined to have a snap that I have not showed y'all. Feel free to toy around with the extra O snaps that are in there. I felt really inclined just then to have the perpendicular one on when I was drawing that line. So I'll show you real quick what it does, if anyone's curious. So if you click perpendicular, if I draw a line from, say, let's make sure I turn this on, say the midpoint, but I don't know where it's how to get straight up and snap to the next line. The only other snaps I had on before were my midpoint, which that drawing a line from there to there really doesn't do me any good, right? And then drawing a line there to there is not going to do me any good. I want straight up, the perfect connection, 90 degrees up. And your ortho sends you that direction, but doesn't tell you when you attach perfectly to the next line. So if I don't have perpendicular on, I don't know when to stop and when to perfectly click onto that line. If I turn on perpendicular, it gives you this little right angle, pretty little right angle. If you click for that one, it perfectly draws a line that is perpendicular from one point to the next, and it snaps perfectly to the next line as well. So when you draw this line, instead of just clicking like I did, which looks horrible, right? Because there's a giant gap in there. This one's perfect. Then I can do that, convert to arc, and warp it over like that. Make it nicer. What's up? Sure.
Oh.
Yeah, we don't want to clog it up in a lot of times with large documents. You probably rely on the legal conversation areas. Like dimension, the ones that normally help.
When I download that.
So right now, the stuff you just have to do, just line up, the other ones you get like you want, and then just get it close. And then it's asking for the what's inside number. Just, it should be just, screenshot. Okay, And then it's just asking that you set up new folders for each of the assignments, stuff like that. Of this class, yeah. If you want to start that one. And then go back to this one. That's what I just went over. So if you select any line, you can see. So this is where I said don't use lines, only use polylines. Yes, there's a lot of things you can do. So you can use a polyline in order to do. Yes. And then that was the line. Enter, save. Okay. Hover over to this one. Guys, make sure you're not using lines, only polylines. 6 inches. So sometimes you can use polylines to attempt to use as measurements, or you can move an object. So if you know how big this is, right? If you drew a rectangle that's 8 by 16, and then you use the move command to snap it to this point and then push it exactly 6 inches. I'll do that here real quick because I think this would be helpful.
So here's a tip that I think will be useful as well. Someone encountered for the bottom portion here. He started from the bottom and he drew these 2 rectangles, but didn't know how to get this 6-inch gap between here. How do you start there? There's a billion different ways to do it. I'm going to attempt a method and see if it seems effective. So I'm going to do my simulation of a couple of those rectangles at the bottom. My commands on my computer are different than these, so I'm not as quick. There we go. So we know that those CMU units, concrete masonry units, are 8 by 8 by 16. So when they're down here, it's going to be 8 by 16, right? So I'm going to make my rectangle, enter, click, and then I'm going to choose dimensions. And I'm going to make sure that it is 8 inches, enter, 16 inches, enter. And then I have to go change that because it didn't like which direction those are. So I'm going to start with 16 inches, enter, 8 inches, enter, and it fixed it. Okay. So I went into the dimensions and changed it to get that perfect block. So I know this is the right size, and say these are the right size, they're probably not. Then I can use the move command, or you can use a polyline to find grips. So you can draw a line from this endpoint in 6 inches. So I type in 6, enter. And now I have, if you select that line, you have a grip point and a snap. So if I draw another line and I'm looking for that point, I have an endpoint now that something can snap to. So the same thing goes for moving things or copying things. So if I select this rectangle and I've now drawn this, then I can select the rectangle, do the move command, M, enter, select the grip point. So I want it to snap to this end of the CMU. So click. So now I'm holding it. I'm going to turn off my ortho. Now I'm holding it by that corner. And I know that this spot, this endpoint, is exactly 6 inches away from the edge. So then I click here and I know I have the perfect spacing between there and there. You can also avoid the polyline and just move. You can use the move command and bring it to the edge here. You can bring it there. Now you know it's exactly lined up with everything. And if you would like to make it perfect, you can select it once again, use the move command, and you can select anywhere on here. I turn my ortho on so that it slides nicely only on the bottom edge because I know it's perfectly lined up. Now I can slide it. The same thing with move and copy. You can type in a number and it will move it that distance. So if I start moving this direction and type in 6 inches, enter, it will move it exactly 6 inches away. And how I can check to make sure that it's correct is I can draw a polyline from here to here, and it says it's 6 inches. So I know that I've properly moved it that direction. Does that help? Useful? Yeah, does that make sense? Sweet. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left of class time. Obviously, you can hang out in here and continue your stuff. This stuff is going to be due midnight at Friday. I'm hoping that a majority of you have some good foundational stuff and a good hunk of this completed to where it shouldn't be too gruesome to get this finished outside of class. Feel free, especially because this is the first one. This is the first time I've formally taught this. I do the over your shoulder method all the time and try and help people, but going through step by step and grabbing every little thing, obviously I miss some things that might be totally vital or you think are something worth knowing that I never even considered. Feel free to send us a Canvas message or an email. Put both me and Jess in it whenever you send it. And go ahead and shoot us a question anytime during the week, and we'll try and get to that as quick as possible to be able to give you some help, whether it's a quick question or I'm happy to send links and videos or things like that, that resources online to help guide you. If you notice at the bottom of your exercise sheets or your assignment sheets, there is a list of resources that link you to the AutoCAD forum, which is where I literally find all my solutions to everything AutoCAD related. There's the Beehive link, so that's the Stuckman based digital support. And all of your exercise sheet has those links to each of your commands individually. There's a lot of resources for you guys, but a lot of them means that you might miss a lot of them as well. I've also provided things like adding AutoCAD to your personal laptop if you haven't already. This is the link in the modules in Canvas that might help you out. AutoCAD Help has the Beehive, LinkedIn Learning, all those kind of things in it. Learning the interface, that was copied over, that's LinkedIn Learning to refresh if you forget what things are in there. I've also provided a big long list of commands. You have been given the world's smallest hunk of these. There is a ginormous list. This is not even comprehensive for the whole program. It's just what I felt was more applicable to you guys. So if you wanted to have a nice reference sheet of commands, that's useful if you wanted to check it out. So like I said, please let us know and give us feedback if things suck or if things are great and work for you. Or if you need help or assistance or we didn't clarify everything, go ahead and shoot us an email, come ask us. We're open to that. Cool. Is there any questions? Yeah, what's up?
How do we like save it so that we're able to open it or just automatically save it?
This so the question is whether or not you how do you save this to where you can open it on your laptops? This is part of the reason why we wanted OneDrive to be successful. If you can save it that way, it would be great. So if you did not get OneDrive server to work in your computer, save it on this computer, and then you want to open, if you don't already, if you have a flash drive, your life is easier, you can save it on a flash drive. If not, save it to this computer, then open up OneDrive on online, So you want to open that up and you're going to go navigate to your folders in OneDrive and upload this document, this AutoCAD DWG, and any other files or screenshots that you've done today. It's best to back up kind of deal. I'm not sure how these systems work in the studio computers. If any of these, like for instance, in this classroom, if they wipe themselves out and clear all data at any point, I'm not sure how often they do that. So yes, save these things and then upload it to a cloud or an alternative storage. Find some method of accessing this always. The OneDrive method is like the way to go whenever it comes to getting it set up on a server on your computer. And I'll talk to Goldberg about whether or not we can make sure that that actually happens on all these computers and what can be fixed for that. Was there another question that I missed? No? Yes. Oh, okay, it's specific to your thing. Okay, awesome. Jess, do you have anything on your side?
Nope, we're
Awesome,
good.
thanks, cool.
That was a little bit more. I put it there so that everyone knows everything's flexible and there's dimensions from it. Partially just that you'll see.
So the report has to be like.
No, you've just been given instructions for the whole part, so just get it to look like that. and
Okay,
appear
is
like
that the
that.
same for this? You don't have to do like any specific curve?
Yeah. So if you draw a polyline from there to there. Because took in line, so you'll have to make it closer, later using. And into those maps, and select the line, hover over the midpoint of any line, it says number four. From here to there. No, width. Sure, you're good. No worries, I just- Great job, guys. Thank you. So just draw me at the close line. Try and get them centered in there, things like that, practice those snaps, that get them to look precise, so that it's not. So that it moves this down, so I'm gonna want to question it.
like one of the. It's just like.
Yeah.
Which line up?
OneDrive. Personal one. And then there's also Penn State one. Penn State, everything you put in Penn State OneDrive will sit here, it will sync. These sync, and it'll tell you that it syncs things. So it says, hey, you put this in here one time, and now we're syncing it to the cloud. And so this should appear on the online version, and anytime we set this little server page up on another computer, normally you can really type OneDrive. It'll be. You should make that file structure. So that they want to make it beautiful.
Jess, I'm gonna shut down the Zoom, if that's okay with you. And you can still tap in, I guess, and I can call you if you need it.